Hi there, my name is Peter-Allan, co-owner and winemaker of Crystallum Wines. I'm here today to introduce my new vintage, the 2019s. I'm coming to you from my shed, my barrel cellar, where we do all our own labeling, all our own waxing of our wines by hand. I'll introduce you quickly to my Crystallum team. This is Derek. Hello, Derek.
Hi.
Abdullah.
Gift.
And Gift. So as you can see, we're a small team. So 2019 vintage, really great vintage. It's probably the first vintage that we can call post-drought. So we had much better rains in 2018. The wines got lovely freshness, lovely purity, consistent across the range, I believe, and a vintage that I'm really excited about. So the wines that I'm going to show you today, we're going to start with the Clay Shales. There we go. So Clay Shales Chardonnay, it's a single vintage Chardonnay from the Himalayan Ardo Ridge. Very small production. It's the only single vintage Chardonnay that we do. Hopefully we'll do some more going forward, but nothing that I've made from any other Chardonnay vineyard has come close to the quality of the Clay Shales. So that's why we haven't introduced another single vineyard. We use mainly larger format oak for this wine, Austrian oak as well, so really tight grained, really oak that doesn't have much flavor influence on the wine at all. Everything's natural fermentation using low levels of sulfur as well. Then we've got the Peter Max Pinot Noir. So this is the largest Pinot production that we do. Largest bottling that we do. It's a multiple vineyard wine. It comes from 5 different vineyards, 4 in the Himalayan Ardo region, and then 1 outlying high altitude vineyard. It's about 50% whole cluster in the fermentation. Once again, wild fermentation. The Peter Max is generally for earlier drinking. It's usually got a little more upfront fruit. Still a classic elegance and complexity that I feel defines Crystallum, but something that you can open a little earlier. Then I'm going to show you a new wine. It's called the Litigo. And this is from a vineyard that we own with a guy called Eben van Wyk. He's a lawyer friend of mine. I've been making a wine for him called Litigo the last 6 years. And now that wine has come under the Crystallum range because we own the vineyard together. And it's a continuation of that, but obviously something new under the Crystallum range. This is a vineyard that we own. All the other vineyards that we work with, we have long-term contracts. So they're not vineyards that we own, but we do farm them personally, and we act as if we own those vineyards ourselves. Next one I'm going to show you is the Mabala. This is a vineyard that's outside of the Himalayan Ardo. It's behind a town called Philglas in a little ward called Elandskloof. What makes this vineyard significant is that it's 700 meters high, 700 meters above sea level. So it's one of the highest vineyards in South Africa, and one of the probably one of, if not the highest Pinot Noir vineyard in South Africa. So the Mabala, being outside of the Himalayan Ardo, has a very different profile. It usually has more of an elegant kind of tannin profile, less tannin, a little bit more mid-palate, but something that fits really well into the Crystallum stable, but a little atypical from the other wines. Then we got the Kuvo Cinema. So this is probably the most critically acclaimed of our wines. The 2018 was awarded 98 points last year in a decanter blind tasting of top New World Pinots, which was fantastic for us. Not that we make wines for the points, but we'll take it. It's from the Himalayan Ardo Ridge. It's a vineyard that's planted high density, so it's 8,500 vines per hectare. Usually has a little more structure than the other wines and will reward longer aging. I'd say give it 5 to 8 years if you can resist it. And then finally, the whole bunch. So this is a bottling that I do of 100% whole cluster Pinot Noir. It started off as an experiment just to see how 100% whole cluster Pinot ferment would work, and specifically just to see how that's going to age over time. Tasting a lot of the world's top Burgundies, what they have in common is that most of them are, if not 100%, then close to 100% whole cluster ferment. And that extra tannin, that extra spice that you get in the wine, I think will really benefit from longer aging. So if you can, I'd say give that 8 to 10 years. I hope you enjoy the wines. Thank you.